As the political center of Africa, the home of the AU, with the best continental airline that connects Africa to the rest of the world, and the largest renewable power source supplying electricity to East Africa and beyond, with new urban city restructuring to host Africans all over, and their recent open border policy, Ethiopia is truly the capital of Africa. When you think of Ethiopia, what comes to mind? The country is like no other on the continent. It was never colonized, is rooted in a rich, traceable history, and is home to a largely homogeneous culture. It's also the birthplace of the Rasta movement, with Haile Salasi leaving his mark. But all that aside, the country is the diplomatic epicenter of Africa, housing the African Union building and major continental meetings. If you walk the streets of Addis Ababa, you'll spot flags from across the continent, avenues named after other African nations, and a rich cosmopolitan mix of cultures mingling in one city. But there's more to the country. In this video, we will tell you how Ethiopia became the unofficial political capital of Africa and its plan to cement its status, not just in politics, but in other sectors as well. Ethiopia didn't just become important in African politics overnight. A big part of its influence comes from its history. Unlike most African countries, Ethiopia was never fully colonized, and that gave it a level of credibility early on. At a time when many nations were just gaining independence, Ethiopia already had an established identity and voice, which made other African leaders take it seriously. Location also plays a role. Sitting in East Africa, Ethiopia is fairly accessible from different parts of the continent, making it a practical meeting point. But what really cemented its status was what happened in Addis Ababa. The city became the headquarters of the African Union, which immediately turned it into the center of continental decision-making. On top of that, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa is also based there, so there's a constant presence of global and regional diplomacy happening in one place. This didn't happen by accident. Former Emperor Haile Salasi pushed strongly for African unity and worked to position Ethiopia as a diplomatic hub. That effort paid off in 1963, when the Organization of African Unity was formed in Addis Ababa. That moment set the tone for what the city would become over time. Today, Addis Ababa is filled with embassies, diplomats, and international officials. It regularly hosts major summits, peace talks, and negotiations, especially for conflicts in places like Sudan, Somalia, and South Sudan. When there is a serious issue on the continent, there's a good chance discussions will happen there. But positioning yourself as the center of a continent means people all over Africa will be traveling to you. This means there has to be a reliable mode of transport to and away from the country. Enter Ethiopia Airways. If you look at aviation in Africa today, it's hard to ignore Ethiopian Airlines. Over the years, it has quietly grown into the largest and most connected airline on the continent, flying to more African cities than any other carrier. While many national airlines across Africa struggled or even collapsed, Ethiopian Airlines kept expanding, and a big reason for that is consistent government support and long-term planning. At the center of everything is Addis Ababa. The airline uses the city as its main hub, and that has made travel across Africa much easier. Instead of routing passengers through Europe or the Middle East, Ethiopian Airlines focuses on connecting African cities directly to each other. That shift has made a big difference, especially for business and regional travel. Addis Ababa Bole International Airport has grown alongside the airline and is now one of the busiest transit hubs in Africa. It handles a constant flow of passengers moving within the continent and beyond. But demand has grown so much that the airport is starting to feel the pressure, which is why Ethiopia is now planning a new, larger airport to handle future traffic. An airport poised to move almost 100 million passengers a year. The airline has also built strong links to the rest of the world. It offers direct flights to North America, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, making it one of the few African carriers with truly global reach. Being a member of Star Alliance also helps, as it connects the airline to a wider network of international partners. The airline has also invested heavily in modern aircraft, like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and Airbus A350. These planes are more efficient and can handle long-distance routes without the need for frequent refueling, which keeps operations smoother and more competitive. Pricing and strategy have also played a role. Ethiopian Airlines has managed to stay competitive while steadily expanding its network, and that balance has helped it dominate African aviation. At this point, it's not just an airline, but a key piece of infrastructure that connects Africa to itself and to the rest of the world. But connection is nothing if you cannot keep the lights on to power all that infrastructure and industry. That's why Ethiopia is moving big into energy. Ethiopia's energy plan right now is centered on one major idea: produce more power than it needs and sell the rest to its neighbors. At the heart of this is the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a massive project that is expected to generate about 5,150 megawatts of electricity. That is enough to more than double the country's current power output, which means Ethiopia is not just thinking about meeting domestic demand, but planning for export from the start. The bigger goal is to turn the country into a regional electricity hub by 2030. Instead of each country struggling to produce enough power on its own, Ethiopia wants to supply a large part of East Africa using hydropower. It has already started doing this, exporting electricity to Kenya, Sudan, and Djibouti. What makes this more than just an idea is the infrastructure being built around it. Ethiopia is investing in high-voltage transmission lines that connect its grid to neighboring countries, making cross-border electricity trade possible on a large scale. There are also new agreements in place and more in discussion, with plans to extend supply to Tanzania, South Sudan, and even Somalia. Financially, the impact could be huge. The dam alone is expected to bring in hundreds of millions, possibly over $1 billion a year once everything is running at full capacity. That creates a steady source of foreign income, something many developing economies struggle to secure. At the same time, this is not just about money. By supplying electricity to multiple countries, Ethiopia is building long-term influence in the region. Power, no pun intended, is something every country needs daily. So once those connections are in place, they create a kind of dependence that goes beyond simple trade. It turns energy into a tool of regional influence, not just infrastructure. With electricity, the country can then power industries and businesses. But all this would be useless if the avenue to run a business was not optimized. That's why the new policy around business is changing. Ethiopia has been making a clear push to become easier to do business in, especially as it tries to position itself as a manufacturing and trade hub in Africa. One of the biggest moves has been the development of industrial parks like Hawassa, where companies can set up quickly with ready-made infrastructure. This ties directly into the African Continental Free Trade Area, which gives businesses easier access to markets across the continent. The government has also worked on reducing the usual delays that come with starting and running a business. Processes like registration and licensing have been simplified, and one-stop service centers now handle permits, taxes, and approvals in a single place. That alone cuts down a lot of time and frustration for investors. At the same time, sectors that were once tightly controlled, like telecom and logistics, are slowly opening up to private and foreign players. Add in incentives like tax holidays, duty-free machinery imports, and cheaper land leases, and it becomes more attractive for companies to invest. Infrastructure is another big part of the plan. With Ethiopian Airlines and the Addis-Djibouti rail link, moving goods in and out of the country is getting easier. On top of that, the shift toward digital government services is helping reduce bureaucracy and improve transparency, making the overall business environment more practical and efficient. But what's a great business space without solid political relations with other nations? Way before Ethiopia even joined BRICS, China had been its biggest partner, especially when it comes to building infrastructure and boosting the economy. Over the past few years, Chinese companies and financiers have been behind massive projects, from railways and roads to power plants and telecom systems. One of the most significant achievements is the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway. Built with Chinese support, it has turned into a major trade corridor, linking Ethiopia to global shipping routes and speeding up the flow of goods. But it's not just about transport. Thousands of Chinese-backed projects in construction, energy, and manufacturing have been rolled out, helping Ethiopia scale up development quickly. Industrial investment is growing too, with factories like the Lemi National Cement Factory set up to boost local production and even export products across Africa. Clean energy is also a priority, with over $500 million invested in solar manufacturing, helping Ethiopia move toward energy independence. Education is part of the plan as well. China is offering scholarships through programs like MOFCOM for government workers and CSC scholarships for students, sending tens of thousands of Ethiopians to China to get their master's degree and PhD in Chinese institutions. This builds stronger political and economic ties between the two countries and facilitates future development of the country. Digital infrastructure and urban development projects are also growing fast. Under the Digital Ethiopia 2030 initiative, China supports improvements in telecom, tech, and digital systems. Smart city and corridor programs are upgrading roads, housing, and city layouts, showing a commitment to long-term modernization. Recent talks in 2026 highlight continued collaboration, including debt restructuring, ongoing project execution, and new financing deals. The partnership isn't a one-time effort, it's evolving, with China playing a central role in helping Ethiopia grow its infrastructure, industrial capacity, and overall economic footprint. And as the country grows and people migrate to the region, the population would expand. And an expanding population would demand more food. That's why the agricultural initiatives are also playing a huge role for the continent of Africa. Ethiopia is taking a big step toward modernizing its agriculture sector, which is a major part of the economy and employs a large portion of the population. One of the biggest moves is the new urea fertilizer plant being built with Dangote Group. Valued at around $3 billion, this project is set to produce about 3 million metric tons of fertilizer every year, making it one of the largest single-site urea facilities in the world. The plant is a game changer for Ethiopia because it will reduce reliance on imported fertilizer, which has often been costly and unreliable due to global price swings. The plan is to also export surplus fertilizer to neighboring countries like Kenya, Somalia, and South Sudan, boosting Ethiopia's role as a regional agro-industrial hub. Strategically located near natural gas fields, the facility has access to domestic inputs, and it includes pipelines, storage, and logistics systems to support large-scale production and export. With Ethiopian investment holdings holding a stake, the project is clearly part of a long-term government strategy, not just a private venture. The broader aim is improving food security and agricultural productivity, since fertilizer use in Ethiopia is still low compared to developed countries. This project is a key part of Ethiopia's plan to supply both food and agricultural inputs across Africa, strengthening its position in the regional market. Looking at all these, there's no doubt that Ethiopia has big plans to be the center of Africa in the nearest decades. Hopefully, other African countries can learn and follow suit.